Now, we've touched on this earlier in some previous videos, but I'm going to talk about fatigue today. And not fatigue acutely, like workout to workout, but what I want to talk about specifically is the accumulation of fatigue and how biology is action over time. And sometimes, inexplicably, a whole bunch of fatigue can just pile on you all at once. All right, so what is fatigue? Well, a definition of fatigue is a decrease in the strength of muscle contractions due to repeated stimulation without rest. So basically, we've all been there before, right? We've been completely smoked by, even out of the context of training, just life in general, work, stress, whatever. But what I want to talk about specifically today is how sometimes you can kind of do everything by the book in terms of the X's and O's of recovery. So you train, you eat well, you hydrate, you sleep, but unbeknownst to you, the aggregate fatigue accumulation, the aggregate stress imposition, whether it's, again, work, life, training, all these things, environmental, in aggregate, put you in a spot that you just can't recover from, at least not immediately. The idea for this topic came up because the day prior to this bike that you're watching right now, I did all the normal recovery things that should have very easily gotten me a full minute faster than this. And in spite of going into it with the assumption that I was fully recovered, I actually had to struggle to barely meet my standards. I haven't had a performance this poor on the bike for several weeks. Now, why is that? Why, after a good night's sleep and plenty of food and doing all the things that I'm supposed to do, I had such a poor performance on the bike? It is because the prior week, my training volume, specifically my pressing volume, was way higher than it normally is in terms of total poundage. Not only for me is lifting a much more significant, much more robust stressor than conditioning is, but specifically pressing volume for me is a much more robust stressor than any other kind of lifting volume. And stimulus to fatigue ratios of exercises, both specific exercises and types of exercise, vary from person to person. Some people can press all day, every day, and then as soon as they get under a squat bar, they're just done for the rest of the week. A lot of people's hamstrings are like that, right? Like, you do one high volume, really good set of RDLs, you could be sore for the next 2-3 days. Whereas, one set of bent rows ain't really going to do that to me. So this comes to kind of the crux of the discussion, right? Is I did that work, this video takes place on Tuesday. I did the last of my lifting Sunday, a full 48 hours prior to the filming of this video. Ate well, rested, but then the fatigue from all last week's training volume hit me like a ton of bricks as soon as I got on the bike this particular morning. And it immediately made what should have been a routine conditioning session into a really hard workout just to quote unquote pass. And, I'm using conditioning as an example, which, many people that aren't endurance athletes probably care too much about. But this is something that is most certainly going to affect your lifts, folks. Were I a power athlete, were I trying to work on some plyometrics like jumps or maybe do like snatch or clean and jerk, that kind of thing, or anywhere near a 1RM like 80% or up on any lift, my strength would be significantly diminished if my conditioning was affected this much. Fatigue accumulation, kind of like weight loss, folks, is not a linear process. It comes in waves. Sometimes it's like you can do more and more and more and more work, and it seems like, man, you just have like limitless energy, and then all of a sudden you hit this wall and just get wrecked for a day or two. And that's basically what happened to me today. That bike was struggle city for inexplicably no reason until I stopped and I thought about it, and I was like, wait a minute, I did do a second pressing session. I went up in weight for the first time in months, and then the rest of my training volume was pretty high as well. So in aggregate, I probably, added 20-30% to my training volume, and then just did the regular amount of recovery. So it makes sense that after a while it just built up to the point of no return, and I suffered for it. Any kind of stress can do this to you, folks, whether it's lifting, conditioning, dieting, so being in too big a deficit for too long, obviously things like the environment, sickness, any kind of buildup of stress. After a certain point, if you either don't back off of the stress or increase the recovery necessary for that stress, you'll hit a wall and something's going to have to give. Hopefully what you take from this video is that, paying attention to the leading and lagging indicators of your fatigue accumulation is an extremely useful tool, number one, for your consistency, because you don't want to over egg the cake, so to speak, and then be forced to take time off because you just don't have the energy to perform, or worse, drive yourself into an injury. And ultimately, folks, that's why tracking, journaling, whatever you want to call it, has value. It's having those lagging indicators at a glance, so when weird things that don't make sense happen to you, you can kind of suss out the reason why. Figure out where you zigged, where you should have zagged, adjust fire, and then improve upon the process in successive iterations. A little less hard science in the video today, but hopefully it was useful to you regardless. Like and subscribe, all the YouTube stuff. Listen to your body, folks, and stay in the fight. Thanks for watching.